Welcome to Martin Survival. Today I'm joined with knife designer, Arizona Bushman, John Campbell. And we do have quite a few edible plants in this generalized area next to the stream. So I want to point out a few useful plants with you guys. Stick around and let's get started.
All right, welcome back. What we've got here is a dandelion. You see the nice little pretty yellow flower here. And what I like to do is I'll pick it, and I prefer to cook them. A lot of people will put these into a salad. I find them to be fairly bitter, so I like to cook them up. And not only that, I'm not going to pull this one up, but the root itself can actually be roasted, and you can make a good coffee out of it. It's good for the liver, good for the kidneys and things like that. Medicinally, it makes a good diuretic. Like I said, it's a little bitter.
Don't forget. Now here's another useful plant. This is wild mint, also known as spearmint. Very pungent in smell, smells very good, very strong. And this can be thrown in with a salad. I like to eat it raw. You can also use it medicinally. I can use it as a tea. If I seep this in water, it's good for coughs, it's good for congestion, and the Ojibwe Indians use this as a blood purifier. Very strong in taste.
Right, hang on. Well, we got a little bit of broadleaf plantain here, and these are a little bit older leaves, so if you're going to eat them and throw them into a salad, these are going to be a little tough and a little bitter. I would wait until this younger one here, or I'd pick this one. Even then, to me, they're pretty bitter. Most of the plants I find, as far as being edible raw, are fairly bitter. You notice it's starting to get a little flower spike on it. The seeds in there can be ground into a flour, and you can put them into soup, stews, what have you. The medicinal uses for this are numerous, so I'll just name a few. I'm sure in the comment section people will be throwing a lot in, that's fine. I like to use this for burns, bites, stings, and things of that nature.
So this right here is another useful plant out in the field. This is called curly dock. A good way to identify this plant is if you take a close look at the leaf, it kind of has a rippled effect to it. It also is kind of a coarse leaf. Now this plant is completely edible. I can harvest the young leaves. I can also harvest the more mature leaves and cook them in several changes of water. Now you want to cook this plant in particular because of how bitter it is. Have you experimented with this, John?
Yeah, like I said earlier, I like to cook up most of the greens that I find out in the field. A lot of them are definitely pretty bitter. Yeah. Sometimes it can take a couple of changes of water depending. And another little side note, I have had curled dock cooked up with white sweet clover in the past.
Absolutely.
And it's a good addition.
This right here is a young Molen plant. It's in its basal rosette stage. And this is another very useful plant out in the field. I use the young basal rosette, and especially these larger leaves, for when I use the hand drill. I'll get a lot of blisters on my hands. Eventually they will callus over and turn hard. But when those blisters are fresh, you guys know how painful that can be. So what I do is I pound that down into a poultice and I wrap it with my bandana, and it kind of relieves some of the pain. What are your experience with Molen?
Well, a lot of times, like if you have new footwear and you decide to take a hike, or maybe you get a blister on your foot, the same rule applies. You can put that inside your sock and it'll do the same thing as you walk. It'll help cushion it. Now, in a lot of cases, people have said, well, that's natural toilet paper.
Because it's fuzzy on the underside as well as the top of the leaf. So,
and there's a lot of people that actually have adverse reactions to that. And it'll have you walking funny. Seriously.
Absolutely.
And then another thing you can do with it, you can bruise the leaves up, and any area of your body that smells, if you're not sensitive to it, you can use it as kind of a deodorant.
Yeah. Absolutely. Kind of has a unique smell to it. A little bit on the lettucey side, it smells like.
Yeah, it's a good plant to know.
Another thing you can use the Molen for is, because this has very fine hairs on it, you can use this to soak up anything. So if you get a wound on your arm or something, you have a cut, you can use this to soak up the blood, and it kind of works as a paper towel or a tissue.
And when it's dry, added to a tinder bundle, it makes an excellent coal extender.
And as well as a smoke. People smoke these leaves.
I don't.
I don't either. I don't recommend it. The Native Americans used to do it for breathing problems. It would help open up their airways.
I have made a tea out of a few young leaves for chest congestion, along with a few sprigs of western yarrow, and it helped with my chest congestion.
Yeah. Now, when this thing gets a little bit larger into its second and third year of development, you can harvest the large shoot, and you can use that for a hand drill. It has a very pithy center. So what's that pithy center going to do? Well, it's going to heat up. It's going to create much more heat than, say, a hard wood. So it's excellent for primitive fire. Now, John, this is a very good plant. This is called purslane.
Yep. It's actually one of my favorites. It's got a very good flavor, and you notice the leaves are almost like succulent-like. It's very tasty.
Very good.
I see you're already going to town on it.
Oh, man. This is one of my favorite plants, folks.
It's really refreshing. It's very good.
It's also good for you.
You wouldn't happen to know what the manganese content is, would you?
Now, you do got to be careful with this plant. There is a toxic lookalike. That's in the euphorbia family.
It can be confused with euphorbia.
Very good. Now, this last plant I'm going to cover is called wood sorrel. And if we were to cover every single plant along this stream side, we would be here for hours. There's so many useful plants. But a lot of folks will complain about some of these plants that do a lot of foraging and harvesting. They say every single lettucey type plant tastes very similar. Well, this plant is very sweet in taste. It also has a cooling effect. This is once again called wood sorrel. The way to identify it is on each stem you will see 3 heart-shaped leaves. Now, this plant is very lemony and sweet in flavor. It's also a dangerous plant as well. This has oxalic acid in it, so you want to be very careful when consuming this plant. You want to only eat small amounts. You don't want to harvest too much because of that stomach irritation. But in small quantities, it's very good in taste. Tastes just like biting into a lemon.
Now, oxalic acid will also interfere with intestinal absorption of certain nutrients.
Yep, absolutely. So this is a very useful plant, but can be dangerous, so watch out.
And yet a very cool plant.
All right, guys, so that's just about going to wrap things up for John and I today on useful plants near this stream. One thing I want to leave you guys off with, and that's identification. If you cannot positively identify a plant, don't touch it. There's very toxic plants that look very similar to edible ones. So just leave it alone unless you can positively identify that plant. I do appreciate you joining me for this video. I'm Jeff with martinsurvival.com.
I'm John from ArizonaBushman.com.
And we'll see you in the next one.